Chairman and Managing Trustee, Advocate Dr. B. Krishnadas, Dr. IAS Rajan, Dr. Nalin Abheshekar, Professor Umesh Devanand and Dr. Raj Sheshadri, distinguished visitors, speakers, and delegates to this very important conference. In fact, Dr. Krishnadas has made my job much easier because he has covered most of the areas or most of the aspects of this conference. When I was invited to inaugurate this very important conference, I was baffled as to why I was chosen. I am not a well-known Sanskrit scholar or Gita scholar in the country, nor do I have the habit of scattering or rather punctuating my public speeches with Sanskrit slogas, half understood and half misunderstood. I seldom quote Sanskrit slogas because I am not a Sanskrit scholar. I am not a renunciate who has renounced all the worldly comforts and lives like a yogi. Somehow I thought that the organizers might have got some illusions about me, and therefore I was given the honor of inaugurating this. Therefore I stand here with considerable amount of trepidation, which is very unnatural or unusual for a person like me who spends a fair amount of time before the microphone. Why trepidation today is because I am an expert neither on Gita or on management. Had I been an expert in management, I would have covered up my ignorance of Gita by my knowledge on management and vice versa. Now I have a blank scores on both sides, therefore that makes me slightly unsure of my the Riyasodhanta, as they say, of my being here. The only solace on reflection seems to be that one has done some management. And what kind of management? One has managed one's life till the age of 64. Not badly managed, I suppose. So that gives me some idea about how to manage one's life. Some management is. Or one has managed a marriage for the last 40 years, as evidenced by the presence of my better half in this audience. So the marriage also has been managed fairly well, I suppose. But these simple credentials are not sufficient. They get stymied by the enormity and profundity of the topic in hand. I should regain composure, unlike Arjuna, by the realization that I am not the sole warrior in this battle. Arjuna knows that it is his mountain duty to win the war. I realize that I am not the only warrior here. There are eminent warriors. Therefore, even if I make a mistake, somebody else will undo it. That gives me some kind of a solace and commotion. There are lawyers here who would do justice to the topic. That said, I should compliment the management for organizing a thoughtful event like this. Why I say this is a thoughtful event? Because whenever I go to management institutions and talk to management students, and generally follow the ethos that prevails in such institutions, I have always got a slight sense of uneasiness. What are we trying to teach these children? What are we trying to make out of them? Are we trying to teaching them to imitate the West? To forget ourselves? Are we trying to clone them in the models of the Western management schools? Even the great institutions like IAS, I have my own misgivings about the management ethos that actually gets transacted in these institutions. Management studies in India should not be a pale shadow of the Western style of management. And that was founded here. Why? Because We see good on many photographs, particularly of Netherlands. We see all kinds of tulips and wonderful flowers blooming all over. You cannot imagine that we can transplant these plants and have that kind of a flowering effect in our climate. Likewise, our Ulmo hair will not bloom in a Western climate. All these flowers are beautiful, but every territory, every climate, every cultural milieu, every historical milieu has its own appropriate values and attitudes. That alone will work wonders in such an atmosphere. If you are trying to copy from the West, copy from the East, and paste it onto our management milieu, I don't think we can ever become or provide any models for the management studies for the world. So we have to develop our own ethos of management from our own roots, from our own culture, from our own epics, from our own cultural values which have been handed over to us from generation to generation. There is considerable wisdom in this land, but that wisdom has not been distilled for the purpose of modern management. The moment we hear about modern management, we think it is only the management science that has developed in the West. I think it is the Japanese who have given a slight modification to this by talking about the Japanese style of management. After all, what is it? They have only incorporated the modern requirements and placed it in the matrix or context of their own cultural values. That is important, otherwise we can never flower. It is like getting a seed from some old country and trying to sprout it in our tropical climate. It will be very stymied and unfair. Bhagavad Gita is a perennial source of wisdom from which we may quench our thirst according to our capability and need. The very fact that we are talking about Bhagavad Gita after a few millennia since its inception, that itself shows that this text grows in its relevance and value from generation to generation. Or putting it differently, every generation is able to discover something of immense value in this text. Gita can be read as a philosophical text. It can be read as a treatise on politics, on warfare. It can be read as a psychological text. It is a sociological text. And of course, it is eminently a management treatise. The methodology of dialogue employed in the Gita, it is not that Krishna is just pouring out his wisdom incessantly. There is a dialogue between the student and the teacher, the preceptor. This methodology of dialogue employed in the Gita is a most remarkable part of it. Why? Because the reader finds his natural doubts amplified at the appropriate places. When you go through the argument, when you follow the argument up to a point, it becomes slightly difficult and then you have a doubt. Then the author immediately has Arjuna coming in and asking the same question which you wanted to ask. That is the beauty of the text. We as Indians should be proud. There are several things to be proud of and several things not to be so proud of. But we can be proud of, if not for anything else, for this single magnificent text of eternal wisdom, which is the contribution of Indian civilization to humanity at large. This one text should make us immensely proud for the centuries to come, because it has everything. It has crystallized the essence of Indian wisdom in its 18 chapters. And you can interpret the way you want. You can discover the relief you want. You can find the guidance you require. Everything is there because it has come from years of concentrated, dedicated investigation into the mysteries. It is not a PhD thesis which has been created in 3 years. Behind it is the crystallized wisdom of generations. And when we ask, the author of, or the codifier of Mahabharata, places this celestial text in a particular context in Mahabharata. As we all know, I don't have to go through and explain, which is very self-evident. Like any professional person, confronted with a tricky and dangerous issue, and professionals always confront tricky and dangerous issues. The more important a person you are, the more complicated issues you have to confront. The more senior a manager you are, the more complicated issues you have to handle. So like any professional, Arjuna is confronted with a tricky, not only tricky, a dangerous issue. It's a tricky and dangerous issue. Arjuna asks the questions each one of us asks umpteen times on much smaller and trivial issues. Arjuna asks the questions which we are familiar. He asks why? Why this war? Why am I waging this war? Why am I killing these enemies? What for? He asks the why and what for. And what if? What if I don't fight? And how do I fight? These are all the questions all of us confront in any situation. Why do I do it? Why do I have got to do it? What if I don't do it? And how do I do it? Why the hell should I do it? These are all the things which we keep on asking in our concentrated problem. When you are confronted with your own problems, all of us ask this question. Arjuna Vishada Yoga is nothing but our confusions concretized. He has to manage, and what is the responsibility of Arjuna in that particular situation where Gita is spoken? Arjuna has to manage a great war. The greatest war Hindustan has seen till then. And the hopes of the Pandava side are almost exclusively on him and his skills. Arjuna is the leader, the great warrior, invincible. He knows that people consider him as the invincible warrior. He has the Gandhiva, he has everything. He has Parthasarathi, he has Lord Krishna as his charioteer. He has a wonderful army, but he has also a wonderful, equally wonderful enemies. That is fine. But the load of responsibility weighs heavily on his shoulders. And the hopes of Pandava side is almost on him, and the load of expectations others are on him. The pledges he has to redeem. He knows everything. There are hundreds of pledges he has to redeem as a result of this war, after winning this war. The acts he has to avenge, evil acts of the enemies he has to avenge, like disrobing Panchayat, Draupadi in the Kaurava Sabha. He has to avenge so many injustices done to them. And he has to avenge all this. All these things weigh heavily in his mind. And it is only natural for a human being to break down in such a charged atmosphere when he glimpses into the futility of all this. Arjuna's reaction is but natural. It is natural for every human being to break down in such a concentrated, intense moment. Arjuna is not a natural weakling who habitually values his self-pity. Arjuna is not used to running away from battlefields. He has fought several wars. He has won several formidable enemies, and he is not scared of war. He is not a silly, big weakling student, no. And he indeed is a great warrior. And Krishna knows it only too well that he is the best warrior in this battle. He knows how good and brilliant this student is. He knows how enlightened my student is. But he has developed some kind of a weakness which is understandable in such a very concentrated situation. And Krishna's understanding of the situation saves the situation and unfolds it into the beautiful Bhagavad Gita that we have today. How is it that? And Krishna has a big job at hand. It is Krishna who manages the situation. How is it that the doubts of this great warrior, Arjuna, are addressed by the Lord? And eventually he is transformed into the true warrior he is. How does Krishna accomplish this great task? How does Krishna succeed in achieving Arjuna's full potential? That is why we say it is Krishna who won the war, because he only instilled unlocked the true potential of Arjuna and made him fight the war. The whole of Gita is indeed a text on the art of informed decision making. Arjuna could not make a decision. Arjuna was confused, and he shares his confusion with his preceptor, who is also his charioteer literally and figuratively. And the Lord tells him step by step the art of decision making, art of informed decision making. What vision, what knowledge, and what skills are required to perform one's dharma and take exalted decisions. That is precisely what Krishna tells Arjuna during the course of Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapters. Management science is all about, I'm sure the students of management will understand what I say. Management science is all about optimizing our capacities and potential. It essentially tries to understand those factors which inhibit the flowering of our personality and unlocks our true potential. That is what management science is all about. It unlocks our true potential. If you are good, management science will make you better. If you don't know how to do something in a particular style, management science will tell you the best way to do it, the most optimal way to do it. So optimizing resources is the challenge of management science. A good manager helps his colleagues and subordinates achieve their full potential so that the overall corporate goals are achieved. An effective manager harmonizes the overall objectives of the corporation with the personal success indicators of his employees. There should not be a clash of interest between the success indicators or the success aspirations of the employee and the aspirations of the corporation. Once there is that dichotomy, then it's like a chariot being pulled in different directions by different horses. Look at what happens in a bad corporation. Inefficiency and corruption are writ large in many organizations, particularly in government. Inefficiency and corruption. Why? Because the person who is inefficient is not inefficient. He chooses to be inefficient. A person who is corrupt chooses to be corrupt. I have no pity for those people who say that, look, what can I do? The system is corrupt, therefore I became corrupt. Nobody will force you to be corrupt unless you decide to be corrupt. The atmosphere of the organization makes you take a decision. It is alright to be corrupt because in any case we are not going to do any good. The overarching purpose of the corporation or the organization doesn't get into the bloodstream of the employee, and therefore the employee thinks it's proper and appropriate to make some quick money and to indulge himself in happy pursuits and be happy about himself and his family. Let the corporation or my organization go to hell. Wherever you see inefficiency and corruption, you can rest assured that the overarching goals of your corporation or the organization have not been ingested or digested by the employees, and that is precisely a management failure. And here, the great management professor, Lord Krishna, the Guru, the professor of management, I should say, enlightened professor of management, accomplishes this task out of his great trust in the student. The basic fact of the situation, why Krishna is able to accomplish this, is because the teacher had utmost faith and trust in the student. He knew his potential, and it's only a temporary cloud that is overhanging. I have to remove it and show him the truth. Out of his understanding that Arjuna's confusion is temporary but genuine, he also realizes that there are no easy solutions. No characteristic strategy will work with a student like Arjuna. Arjuna is not pretending that he is confused. He is truly confused, genuinely confused. And once he is genuinely confused, the teacher has to clear the confusion. And therefore, no characteristic strategy will work. I will give you some special elements. No, that won't work. Arjuna has to have core, deep-seated, deeper answers. Therefore, Krishna goes to the fundamentals. Krishna goes to the fundamentals of existence in a systematic manner, very scientific manner, like any modern management will do. Very systematically, with the patience and understanding of a true teacher. A true teacher has to have both patience and understanding. Understanding of the situation, understanding of the student, and immense patience and faith and confidence that I will be able to overcome this. I will be able to help my student realize his true potential. In the second chapter of Sankhya Yoga, Krishna he starts from the fundamentals. Because Arjuna has been confused by these dualities. I am here, I am going to kill them. Life and death. My success and their loss, they are going to be defeated. My success and their defeat. He was confronted by these dualities. The duality of life and death, permanence and impermanence, joy and sorrow, day and night. This fleeting phenomena cannot be the ultimate truth. Beyond the impermanent shall be a permanence. Chapter 2 says one is, something indestructible is there beyond this vanishing life. And that changelessness is the truth. After establishing the fleeting nature of life and the eternal truth of the Atma, Krishna expounds the theory of equanimity in the chapter that follows, the chapter on Karma Yoga, as to how to do one's action. The very fact that in the second chapter, the duality of life and the meaninglessness of this duality has been established, Krishna has already done a wonderful thing. He has altered the picture. The picture that was confusing Arjuna has been altered. Arjuna said, why am I going to kill all these people? Why should I want victory by killing my masters? So by changing the whole game, Krishna has altered the picture and a new perspective has begun to evolve even after the end of the second chapter. It is common knowledge that it is out of a muddled mind that unwise decisions emanate. We don't require the proof of Bhagavad Gita to understand this. When your mind is muddled, when your mind is scared, you take stupid decisions. That is why Tagore prays, where the mind is without fire and the fear and the head is heavy. It is fear and anger. One would wonder, will anyone, on seeing certain decisions taken by very important people, we have often wondered, will anybody in his senses take such a stupid decision? Why does it happen most of the time? Otherwise, intelligent leaders often take unexplainably stupid decisions. It is wonderful managers, but they must have taken equally bad decisions. Bhagavad Gita makes this brilliant behavioral analysis in a well-known sloka. Krodha bhavati samoha. Samoha smriti vibrama. Smriti brahma bramsha buddhi dasha buddhi dasha nasha. It's a wonderful sloka. It's a behavioral science. Anger, of course, is the most pernicious and poisonous of all human emotions. It is said that one who is controlled by anger does not require another emotion. Anger itself will ensure his doubt, peace or health. Anger leads to delusion, and delusion leads to confusion, to samoha and vibhrama. Lack of discrimination destroys intelligence or clouds your intelligence or rationality, and what more is required for one to take catastrophic decisions and perish. It all starts from your anger, your clouded intelligence, and very systematically. Krodham to samoha, samoha to vibhrama, and vibhrama leads to your nasha, buddhi nasha. Most of the misery that we see in today's world arises from actions taken out of delusion. Look at Second World War. It's a delusion about the supremacy of Arya race. Delusion. Coupled with it anger, samohas, buddhi, everything conspire together, conspires to take catastrophic decisions. Anger and hatred is the killings in the name of religion and ethnicity that we see today in today's world. And short-sighted desires and fulfilling are nothing but they are trying to fulfill their short-sighted desires. And these actions are all triggered by karma and krodha. Karma and krodha. And consequent sammoha. I think we are all deluded by this. Although our karma may not be great karma, our krodha may not be great krodha, our sammoha may not be great sammoha, nevertheless, karma, krodha and sammoha are there. Because we think about ourselves all the time, we do not apply the rules of discrimination. Krishna talks about this after having elaborated the fleeting nature of life. After discussing how selfish interest and attachment to small pleasures conceals or distorts the true picture. After explaining what all calamity a turbulent mind driven by lust and anger would bring about, Krishna goes on to explain the nature of finite emotion. Gita gives the picture of a true karma yogi as one whose senses and mind are unruffled. After explaining how your krodha and your sammoha can destroy the world, he now introduces the concept of equanimity. Gita calls such person of equanimity as Niraprajna. Who is an effective manager? An effective manager is a person who takes decision as a Niraprajna. And who is Niraprajna? Verse 55 of chapter 2 defines Niraprajna as thus. When one entirely abandons all the desires that come into the mind. I will repeat, when one entirely abandons all the desires that come into the mind, or Partha, and when one is satisfied within the self, by the self, then he is called a person of stable wisdom, that is Sthitaprajna. In the following chapter on Karma Yoga, Krishna describes the various ways of performing one's duties and how a Sthitaprajna will discharge his duty unlike somebody with a ruffled mind. Duties can be performed purely out of selfish motives. I get something out of it, therefore I perform. It will lead to my promotion, therefore I do this duty. It will get me a commission, therefore I do this duty. It will humiliate my enemy, therefore I will do my duty. This duty. Duties can be performed purely out of selfish motives. Duties can be performed also by noble motives and can be performed as a duty performed in Yajna Bhava. Human life itself should be converted into a whenever misery has been sown, wherever misery has been sown, we can infer unfailingly that it is the consequence of selfish action. Unadulteratedly selfish action invariably leads to misery and destruction. Actions performed like a yajna as an offering can have really beneficial effects. So the challenge is, will it be possible to perform one's duties in every walk of life and in every situation like an offering, like we do a yajna? That is the challenge. The chapter on Karma Yoga provides practical wisdom as to how does one perform such exalted action as against egotistical action. It discovers the impediments that come in the way of yajna-like action. Everybody cannot, we are not able to perform action like yajna all the time. Why? It is our inability to mentally detach from the action that suffers the quality of such action. Verse 19 in chapter 3, we can read, perform your beautiful actions incessantly without attachment. One who performs actions without attachment attains the supreme. It is guaranteed. But perform your duties, beautiful actions, incessantly. Continue to do it without fear or favor. Don't get distracted by criticism. Incessantly you do it without attachment. One who performs actions without attachment attains the supreme. It could be argued that such unrealistic. It is only yogis who can do it. No. Krishna doesn't say that this is only fit for yogis. For every one of us, we can aspire to the level of performing actions as if we are doing a now. It is not unrealistic. Why should we get attached to the action? Let us think why. The cause of all misery is attachment. Is attachment to action. And of course the result. Why should we get attached to action and its results? The words Karmanyavadi Nagaste Mahapareshwara Rajana is a thoroughly misunderstood idea about it. It has been wrongly interpreted by cynics as an argument to renounce your salary, your recognition, nothing like that. Others have seen it as escapism. You do your duty and run away, whatever be the consequences. You plant a bomb and run away without facing consequences. That is not the kind of Nishkama Karma Gita is talking about. Not escapism, not even renunciation. You act and leave the consequence to others. That is not the idea behind Nishkama Karma. In reality, it only calls for a surrender to a higher force. You do without attachment. You do your duty like a yajna, without getting involved like attached, without getting attached, selfishly attached. Perform your yajna and leave it to a Supreme Lord who will give the result. Managers will have less stress if this action, this attitude is inculcated. Your clinical psychologists and counselors will have much less job if we can cultivate this habit of Sthira. Do your duties and submit to the Lord. The Lord will act on it. That helps take decisions dispassionately, without attachment to action and its fruits. What is important is the mental frame, the mental attitude with which one has to act. Gita elaborates further on this essential attitude in the chapter on karma, sannyasa yoga, which comes subsequently. Karma has to be performed like with sannyasa. You have to renounce the consequence of your action by doing it properly and renouncing the benefits of it to the Supreme Lord. All this essentially leads to the inquiry about true motivation for action. Management terms, what should be your true motivation? Gita doesn't talk about motivation, but actually we should ask, well, how can you do this? You should be properly motivated to do an action like this, which is a major area of management study. Motivation, as you know, is a major area of management study. If selfishness is not desirable motivation, then what shall be the effective and desirable motivation for selfless action? For a world obsessed with selfish success and personal recognition, the terminology of selfless service or karma done with yajna bhava may be baffling. It could evoke the response that these are all not practical. But mind you, this is practical. Whoever has practiced in their life has risen to the zenith of glory. And whoever thought that self-centered action is an intelligent action has been swammed in mediocrity. I say this not because I have been a hugely successful man, but out of the faith in what Gita says, and having practiced a little bit in my life, in my humble way. We are all confronted with problems, with criticism, with allegations, accusations. How do you survive? By the whole faith that you have done something with yajna bhava, without any personal benefit. And therefore, the consequences of this action will be taken care of by the Lord Almighty. That gives a peace of mind. That is dispassionate decision making. It might be baffling for the new world obsessed with self-centeredness and profit and profitability and aggrandizement in all respects. Western mind finds self-interest as a virtue, as the essential driving force behind our actions. There is truth in it, but we have to go beyond that. Gita sounds the note of caution. All your actions cannot be self-centered action. As a human being, one has to be concerned about oneself. But that does not mean that you have to be concerned only about yourself all the 24 hours of a day. Gita sounds that bit of caution here when it advises on selfless service. It should be noted that Gita is not being addressed to a sannyasi. Gita is not being addressed to a renunciate. Gita is addressed to a very man of the world, a king, a warrior. Arjuna is very much living in this world of mundane duties like any one of us, like any administrator or manager. Krishna is not advocating free service or charity. Krishna props the roots, on the other hand, of motivation and slowly takes the discourse to the notion of Swadharma, the notion of one's own duty. I'll conclude with that elaboration on what is the Swadharma and how do you perform your Swadharma. In any organization, besides the core duty, a manager might be doing so many other things. Sometimes he might even forget his core duty and excel in the French duties that he does. From French duties, one may run away, but not from Swadharma or the core duty. Arjuna's core duty here is to fight. And whatever is the consequence, he has to perform it. And that is because when in administrative positions, in management positions, we cannot run away from taking certain decisions. It has to be necessarily taken by you and you alone. You cannot share it. Had it been your peripheral duty, you can say that somebody else will do it. But when it comes to the core duty, you alone have to perform it. And what is the motive and motivation to act out one's core duty or dharma? Gita has already described the mental attributes of such a manager. It has appealed to do it without excessive attachment. However unpleasant that decision may be, one has to take it with an unruffled mind and with an attitude that surrenders the consequence of his action to the Supreme. Action here has to be performed with commitment, dispassion and objectivity without an iota of selfish notions coloring one's judgment. Gita, in fact, is a text on how to take unfaltering decisions. Any karma that becomes an act of giving. What is required is to raise the level of consciousness of a decision maker and change the perspective. And that is what Gita succeeds in doing. A manager who takes decisions with only ad hoc facts of his branch or the immediate situation is only reacting to a situation. His general manager will be taking a different decisions with a different perspective. His CEO will be taking a decision entirely different from what the branch manager has perceived, because the truth is something different and the picture is total for the CEO. He knows what is best interest of the organization. The higher you go and take the overall interest of the corporate, the perspective changes. Likewise, Arjuna is made to look beyond the immediacy of the war. Don't talk about killing Bhishma, only of killing Drona. That of course is the immediate action, but go beyond. Arjuna is taken a higher. Arjuna is able to look beyond the immediacy of the war. In any conflict, unless the perspective is changed, solutions become elusive. Those of you who must have sat on trade union disputes will understand this perfectly well. Trade union might be waging a war or might be fighting with you on a bonus hike. Actually, bonus hike is not the issue. Bonus hike has been precipitated by some event which took place prior to it. You go back to it, the ego must have been ruffled. The ego of the leader must have been ruffled. You get a whole picture. And then the bonus issue becomes a trifle issue which can be transacted in a minute. But if you are trying to fight on this trivial issue, your discussions, negotiations will go until daybreak without an result. The perspective has to change. The picture, the dimensions of the picture have to change. You cannot find a solution to a problem at the wavelength at which that problem was created unless the perspective changed. Krishna not only mentally prepares Arjuna in the art of taking correct decisions, but also explains why such decisions should be taken. In the following chapters, Krishna explains the mystery of existence and demonstrates how all are his integral part. the integral nature, the connectedness of entire creation. In the glimpse of the Virat, Arjuna sees all the cosmos and the creation as manifested in the Supreme. In modern terminology, Arjuna was given the total picture, the ultimate picture, the absolute picture. He was made to understand the connections and connectivity. Nobody is living in this world alone disconnected. In environment studies, we know that the whole ecosystem, our systems are interrelated. The damage you do here will be reflecting somewhere else. And thoughtless action that you do here will be reflected in the ecosystem somewhere else, in the life cycle of some other species. It's all interconnected. It's a web of life of the world, as they call it. In the divine design, the friend and the enemy, the victor and the vanquished, then the question arises, if the evildoer is also part of the cosmic reality, that is part of you, or you are also part of it, and if the evildoer is also part of the whole system and part of the Supreme, how does one annihilate it? That is the question again. As the discourse proceeds, Arjuna is introduced to more complicated issues. The answer is very rational. Imagine our own body, like the Virat, where everything is interconnected. Look at our body as everything is interconnected. Your nervous system, your digestive system, your muscular system, all systems are interconnected. Your lymph systems, all systems are interconnected. Imagine your body. If there is a problem, particularly if you have a malignancy in one part of the body, the oncologist has no option but to remove that part. In the interest of the survival of the whole part. In the interest of the body, that particular part of the body which is diseased, which has become sick, which has become evil, which has become unwanted, which is doing duties which are not beneficial to the whole body, what does the oncologist do? He cuts it away. He removes it. He burns it. He makes it dysfunctional. He destroys it. Likewise, what Kshatriya, the warrior, has to get rid of the evil in this world to salvage it. That is your core duty, that is your Swadharma. As if one is performing a yajna, you have to do this surgery. With surgical precision, you have to remove this evil from this body society so that society and the world lives well. What more profound wisdom of motivation could the Lord have given to Arjuna than this? To energize, to galvanize the warrior in him and understand his true function. Whenever unpleasant and hard decisions need to be taken, the eternal wisdom of Gita has provided insight into the ethical, psychological and cosmic dimensions of one's decisions. The battle of life goes on in a very small and big struggles all the time. Kurukshetra is not a battle fought only once. It is going on in our lives all the time. Gita has perceptively provided the template. Like a good manager, like a good teacher, it has provided a template, a software, an app, if you may say so, by the modern terminology, that will motivate us towards noble, selfless action, which looks like a yajna. Let the great Krishna continue to bless us all. And He dwells, where does He dwell? He dwells in the infinite wisdom within all of us. As our poet Kumar Dashan said, Chindaya Adi Mandiratil Vidangu Vishu. You don't have to search Him in farthest temples. You don't have to walk hundreds of miles in search of the Lord. Search Him within you. He resides within you as the ultimate spark of ineffable wisdom and joy. Let that ineffable wisdom and joy and benevolence symbolized by Lord Krishna bless us all. I inaugurate this conference as a